Oh, this lens spanner will do the job. I thought I would have to go and find the finer tips, but they did the job quite nicely. So that's our rear component, and that's what goes in there between that and the mirror box, and that's what I should have put in there before, of course, and I didn't. I'm going to blame you because you distracted me. Right, pull that wire through, loop that round the front in there, see if this will drop down neatly into place. If not, that wire is probably blocking it. That looks good. 2 screws to hold it loosely in place, and I'll test the action. We'll get that wire seated in place. Pull that wire back out of the way while I get that screw in there. Of course you can see nothing down there. I can hardly see anything down there. Let's just get that screw in place. Ooh, is it going to go? Yes. Run that screw up. That's good. I'll pull my wire through before I tighten anything else up. Yes. Still up that screw. Do that up tight. Do this one up tight. Check my action. That's good. Drop this screw into place. This one has a little clip that holds that wire down in place. And then I can go back and solder that flash connection and test it. So far I only tested the flash by looking at it and deciding that the contact was making proper contact, and the proof of the pudding will be when I connect up an electronic flash and it fires the flash. Check my 4 screws, they're all tight. Check the action again. That's a B setting, 60th of a second, that's fine. What's it like on B? That's better. 60th of a second, what's it like on that? Nothing, something stuck. What's stuck? Oh, did I just have that lever? This lever at the base here, that cocks the shutter. It will also stop it from running if it was allowed to flop back into place. The cocking action cocks it, and then this lever comes back out of the way, clear of the mechanism. And that's what wasn't happening when I was just testing it there. Alright, I'll solder the wire back on. Well, we're back to the body. Now the body, as you may recall, I mentioned that it had foam light seal round here that had given up the ghost, and it certainly has. It's gone. So I'm going to clean up the remains of that, clean the lens there for the eyepiece, make sure the back of the prism is clean before this goes in, put some more foam light trap in here, and reassemble it. Make sure I've got all those nasty crumbs out. That looks pretty good. That was acetone I was using on the cotton bud there. I've got some foam light trap material, and I'll need some strips of that, and I think for preference I will stick them to the mirror box. It looks like 2 strips were stuck down the sides there, one along the top and possibly one at the bottom. Two pieces for the sides, one for the top to there I think, and then we'll cut one for the bottom. Can I get the backing off this stuff? I've had this sitting around for quite some time. The adhesive is probably not as soft as it once was. There we go. This foam could do with being a little bit denser and a bit blacker really, but it'll be a sight better than nothing. It's quite soft. It's at the top. I'll cut that a bit long. This crushes down to almost nothing between the mirror box and the body casting. And a thin strip along the base, I think, for good measure. What do we like for length? And we'll just cut some off this edge. if you didn't have any foam light trap available, you could just as well use a bit of black felt would probably do it. Even thick black woolen yarn, that would certainly do the job too. Using the foam because foam had been what had been used there before and I had it available, but that's the only reason. If I didn't have it available, I'd be forced to use something else. Right, so I want to clean this piece of glass. It's a bit greasy looking, and of course that can't possibly be from me handling it, there must have been someone else. We'll clean this glass eyepiece here too, which looks pretty good. I'm cleaning that inside and out just so that I can see that it is actually clean and see-through. If you only clean one surface, it's a bit hard to tell you've done the job properly. Okay, that's alright. Now I'm not going to peel that leatherette back any further because I don't need to. Lower the mirror box in, get it underneath that leatherette edge. Make sure that the post comes up through that arm, and that should drop down into place, seat against the casting, and that looks pretty good. If I'd had the foresight to put the advance lever and things back in place first, I'd be able to test that before I put the screws around the body, but I didn't, so we won't. So we have 4 screws that hold the front to the main body, and we'll run a couple of them in now. Why is that not picking up? Something's not lining up. Let's see how we go. Oh, let's try that. That front section was not pulled down square. A little nudge with the tweezers, and it decided that yes, it could play the game after all. Alright, so I'll put 2 screws in diagonally just to hold that. Check everything looks pretty good. Now I'm just going to put the film advance lever on the top there. Oh, and that was tough to get off, wasn't it? It's tough to get back on. Let's pop that on there. There's our advance lever. It's a spring and the cap screw. Just run that down. Now that sounds pretty convincing to me. Oh, here. At the 250th, what do we get? Good. Very good. So the last 2 screws into the front, and we'll tighten those up and fit the retaining clip here. So one to the top at this corner. I'm not going to peel those leatherettes all the way back. They are very, very well stuck, and I don't need to, so there's no point in pushing my luck. At this corner, what have we got? Now the leatherette is still in one piece here, it's actually joined at that piece there, that very thin part. Now that's uncommon, and it doesn't matter. Once it's glued back, if this leatherette's broken at that point, once it's all glued back, it'll be invisible. Now I want to be able to see tiny defects because they won't be there to be seen. Right, we'll glue that back later. Check my shutter. That looks good. Continue assembling the front here. The front lens components also were covered in fungus. Well, not covered, they certainly had spots of fungus. I'll be back shortly. Those of you who've worked on AGC shutters, Prontors and the like will be used to seeing a locking screw here, which will stop the retaining ring from backing off and coming loose. Now I see that on this shutter there is no locking screw. They've just used a touch of lacquer to lock that in place, and we'll do the same. It's probably a bit heavy on it. Let's just roll some of that off. That's good. That's all that's needed to lock that in there. Make sure it doesn't run away. There's now I need to check my lenses. The body to one side. We've got two components here. The middle lens component, which is this one, and then the outer lens component, or the front lens component, which is this one. So first I'm going to remove any traces of the old oils and grease from the thread where the focus helical, where the lens screwed in. This is where the front lens component screws in and adjusts by screwing in and out. And I'm just going to remove that old grease. We'll replace that, and the main reason for removing the old grease is that very often it has gone hard and sticky, and even where it hasn't, it will have gathered up contaminants, dust and grit, which will then rub things up, wear the metal out. I'm just wiping around here with some Ronsonol on there just to make sure I've got rid of all that excess grease and rubbish. That glass can be then cleaned, and we'll work on this middle component. There's probably very little oil on the inside surfaces because that's where it screws into the shutter. There's nothing to be seen there. Here's where the front component screws into it, and that's got the grease. It's very black looking grease, so it's probably a graphite grease of some sort, something of that nature. We just need to remove all that loose stuff so that it starts off nice and clean. And the reason I'm cleaning all the oil and grease up at this stage is I don't want any of it floating around loose to cause me trouble when I'm trying to get the glass surfaces clean. That looks good. Now I can clean the glass surfaces. So, two I'm interested in immediately are this one. This is the innermost piece, that's the surface where the lens is facing the shutter blades, and like the rear component, that had certainly had fungus, and I'm just checking that I get that nice and clean and that there are no traces of fungus. I'm looking at it obliquely in the light, looking for anything that looks like contamination on the surface. That looks pretty good. And now I'll clean the other surface and then I can look through it, and again I'll be looking to see if there's any signs of fungus or anything cleanable. I'll be taking note of any scratches. I wouldn't expect to find any on the inner surfaces, but things do get damaged during servicing. I'll just want to take note of them. There aren't things I could fix. And now I'll check that against the light, check that it all looks clear. That looks nice. That lens can screw into the body. First I'll just give that a wee puff, make sure there's no dust in there. Front component can screw in. And that doesn't require an awful lot of tightening, so I'll just take a pair of strong tweezers in the holes and I'll nip that up. That's good. Means we're done in the shutter. We've got this front lens component to clean up and have a look at. So now I'm cleaning the glass surfaces of that. The innermost surface here looks to be virtually flat. Which makes it very easy to distinguish from the reflections if I've got any problem with it. Any marks on the coating, or any fungus or anything of that nature. That looks okay. There's certainly some marks on this lens. I think it's on the outer surface, which is normal. That's where it's open to the atmosphere and where it's been cleaned with the tail end of t-shirts and handkerchiefs and anything else that's handy. And I'll check that by looking against the light. That looks pretty good. Isn't it? Just the slightest bit of haze around the outside edge of that lens. And I'm trying to tell whether it's on the inside or the outside surface. Maybe on the outside, so I'll have another go at cleaning that. It's right on the edges, right on the edges. The centre of the lens is fine. It looks good. It's just like a little sort of cloudy edge to it. I think that got rid of all of it. Alright, so blow the dust off, pop that lens back in there, start the thread. Now I'm going to look out the window and see what the image quality looks like. That looks pretty good. Of course there's no focusing aids with this camera, it's a plain ground glass. But it does look okay, looks good to me. Alright, I'm quite happy with the quality of that. Lubrication. We've got to lubricate that lens where it screws in and out, and then I've got to check the focus.